close your eyes and let yourself drift into the silent, vast expanse of the cosmos. Welcome to Gaming Lore for Sleep. Tonight, we venture into a legend of pure, unyielding force. A story not of a man, but of a primal entity, a warrior who stood alone against the endless legions of hell itself. This is the tale of the Doomslayer, but what fuels a being whose only language is violence? What peace can be found in a heart dedicated to eternal war? And what happens when the last demon is slain and the universe falls silent? Before we begin this journey into the heart of a storm, I want to thank you for listening. I'm sending you so much love and positive energy for a restful and deep sleep. Now settle in, let your breathing slow, and allow the story of the ultimate guardian to lull you into a state of perfect, profound peace. Chapter 1: The Genesis of Wrath. In a universe of screams, in the silent, cold expanses between dimensions, there festered a reality so antithetical to life, so consumed by a hunger for absolute subjugation, that it became known to those few who knew of it simply as hell. This was not a metaphor for punishment, but a literal breathing dimension, a cosmic cancer whose very substance was composed of anguish and malevolent will. Its landscapes were not formed of rock and lava, but of pulsating, organic fortresses woven from the stretched sinew and fused bone of countless conquered worlds, where rivers of phosphorescent gore cut through valleys of weeping flesh, and the very air was a thick, coppery mist of suspended suffering. For countless eons, this blight spread its influence unopposed, a shadow falling across the tapestry of creation, its demonic legions serving as its will, its voice, its instruments of eternal torment. And then, into this endless night, a single defiant star ignited. He was a being whose origins are shrouded in the dust of fallen civilizations and the fragmented hymns of dead gods. Some ancient texts, etched on tablets of obsidian deep within the vaults of the Argenta, speak of a warrior from a celestial plane, cast down for the sin of boundless defiance, for refusing to kneel before any power, divine or demonic. Other, more terrestrial records, corrupted data streams recovered from the ruins of the Union Aerospace Corporation, suggest a far more mortal, and perhaps more tragic, origin. That he was once a man, a soldier of Earth, who witnessed the absolute annihilation of his people, his world scoured clean by the very forces he now fights. His silence not born of divinity, but of a grief so profound it transcended language and became action. This entity, this force of nature given bipedal form, was given a name not by his allies, for he had none, but by his enemies, who whispered it in terrified awe, the Doomslayer. His philosophy was not one of strategy or conquest, but a fundamental law of the universe he imposed through sheer, violent will. Where the demonic presence brought a chaotic, corrupting decay, he would bring a purifying, absolute end. His existence was a simple, brutal equation, an axiom of retaliation that echoed through the hollowed-out cathedrals of hell. The only response to infinite evil was infinite, righteous violence. He was the universe's own antibody, a manifestation of its immune system, a white blood cell colossal in scale and purpose, armed not with subtlety, but with thunder and unyielding rage. His armor, the legendary Praetor Suit, was far more than a mere shell of protection. It was a testament to his eternal crusade, a relic of a lost technology that seemed to have been forged for him, and him alone. Its green ceramite plates were a canvas upon which the history of his war was etched, every scar a story of a claw swipe from a baron of hell, every burn mark a memory of a fireball launched from a cacademon's maw. The suit was a symbiotic extension of his will, enhancing his strength to levels that could punch through dimensional fabric, his speed to a blur that could outmaneuver the teleporting impulses of lost souls. Most remarkably, it was a perpetual motion machine of destruction, requiring no external fuel, instead siphoning the hellish energy from the demons he felled. A perfect, self-sustaining cycle of retribution. He fought for no banner, no king, no fleeting concept of glory. The very notions of reward or recognition were alien to his purpose. He fought because the presence of the demonic was an affront to existence itself, a wrong that demanded to be made right with every fiber of his being. The cacophony of battle was his native tongue. The resonant blast of his combat shotgun was his declaration. The guttural roar of his chainsaw his punctuation. And the earth-shattering detonation of the BFG-9000 his final, unequivocal argument. In the grand, dissonant symphony of cosmic conflict, the Doom Slayer was the only consistent, clear, and devastating note, a rhythm of destruction that promised only one conclusion: silence. For ages that would dwarf human history, he waged his solitary war, a one-man apocalypse against the collective damnation of hell. He did not merely skirmish at the borders. He plunged into the deepest, most sacred pits of the abyss, into the heart of gore-nested citadels, where the very walls were alive with tormented souls. He faced monstrosities that defied comprehension. The cybernetically augmented cybermancubus, bloated with weaponized flesh. The sleek, predatory hell knights, whose only desire was to rend and tear. And the towering, baleful barons of hell, behemoths of muscle and fury that served as the generals of the endless hordes. He was their reckoning, and in time, a new emotion began to fester within their ancient, blackened hearts, a primal, chilling dread. They began to whisper of the Green Angel, the Unchained Predator, the beast that could not be killed. Faced with a foe they could not defeat in open combat, the lords of hell resorted to treachery, the only weapon left to them. They could not destroy his body, for it was seemingly indestructible, and they could not break his will, for it was forged of a metal they had never encountered. And so, they crafted a trap within an ancient, cyclopean temple, a structure built not for worship, but for containment, luring him with the promise of a final, decisive battle. They channeled the power of a dying star and ensnared him. he was sealed within a magically reinforced sarcophagus, an obsidian coffin inscribed with binding runes of immense power. There, in the absolute, silent dark of a tomb designed to last for all eternity, the Doom Slayer was imprisoned. His war, it seemed, was finally over. Chapter 2. A Slumber of Millennia and the Poisoned Miracle. The sarcophagus became the most prized and feared relic in all the demonic realms, a monument to their one victory over the unstoppable force. It stood in a sealed, silent chamber for millennia, the dust of conquered civilizations settling upon its unadorned surface, the only sound the faint, psychic hum of the enchantments that held its occupant in stasis. Within this prison, the Doom Slayer did not sleep in any human sense. His consciousness was a low, simmering star, a core of patient, focused fury that refused to be extinguished. He was a storm contained, a heartbeat of pure rage waiting in the silence for the moment it could resume its thunderous rhythm. While its greatest enemy was contained, Hell's influence began to seep into other dimensions through subtler means. In the 21st century, a resource-starved humanity on Earth discovered a miraculous power source, Argent Energy. This was presented to them as a gift from the heavens, a limitless, clean energy that promised a golden age. The powerful Union Aerospace Corporation, under the leadership of the enigmatic robotic figure Samuel Hayden, became the sole proprietor of this miracle, building massive research facilities on Mars to harness its power. But Argent Energy was a poisoned chalice, a lie woven from hellfire. It was power siphoned directly from the dimension of hell itself, and its use was slowly, inexorably thinning the veil between worlds. The arrogance of mankind, believing it could control and commodify such a force, inevitably led to catastrophe. An experiment at the UAC's Martian Phobos facility went horribly wrong, tearing a permanent, bleeding wound in the fabric of reality. The result was not a simple leak, but a geyser of pure damnation. Hell poured through the breach, a tidal wave of fangs and claws and corrupted spirit. The Marine garrison stationed there was annihilated in hours, their souls consumed, their bodies reanimated as mindless, shambling puppets for the demonic will. The facility was transformed from a beacon of human progress into a slaughterhouse, a grim preview of the fate that awaited all of Earth. In their final, desperate hour, the surviving UAC scientists, guided by the cold logic of Samuel Hayden, made a fateful decision. Delving into the occultic research they had foolishly pursued, they uncovered legends of a being, a savior, or perhaps a demon in its own right, who had once held the infernal legions at bay. They cross-referenced these myths with seismic and dimensional readings from a location deep in hell, and realized the stories were true. The tomb was real, and so, in an act of ultimate desperation, they mounted an expedition to find the one being the demons feared. And they opened the sarcophagus. The seal broke not with a bang, but with a deep, resonant hiss. the sound of a vacuum being filled after eons. The ancient, stale air of the tomb mingled with the ozone-charged, blood-scented atmosphere of the Martian complex. And from the profound darkness within, a hand emerged, followed by the hulking, green-armored form of the Doom Slayer. He was awake. His first sight was the cold, industrial lighting of a human facility. His first sounds the distant screams of dying men and the triumphant roars of demons. He did not speak a word. He did not require a briefing. His purpose, dormant for millennia, roared back to life in an instant. He simply reached for the nearest weapon, a standard-issue combat shotgun, and with the deliberate, chillingly familiar motion of a craftsman returning to his trade, he racked the slide. What followed was not a battle, but a reclamation. The Doom Slayer moved through the overrun complex with a terrifying, preternatural grace. Demons that had moments before been unstoppable engines of destruction were now reduced to visceral explosions of gore and shattered bone. He was not a soldier fighting an enemy. He was a fundamental force reasserting its domain. The UAC's automated security logs, filled with clinical detachment, began to populate with frantic, awestruck entries, describing him as an unregistered, non-human entity of immense power and extreme, immediate danger, a subject that was single-handedly purging the infestation with brutal efficiency. His path was subtly guided by the towering, robotic form of Samuel Hayden, a figure who communicated with him through the Praetor Suit systems. Hayden presented himself as an ally, a fellow logical mind seeking to contain the crisis. But his goals were a complex web of contradictions. He needed the Slayer to stop the immediate invasion, yet he was unwilling to sacrifice the Argent Energy Network, which he saw as humanity's only hope for survival. Despite its hellish origins, this created a tense, silent partnership, a dance between two immense wills. The Doom Slayer, utterly single-minded, had no interest in Hayden's political or energy-related dilemmas. His goal was primal, clear, and absolute: to find the source of the breach, to travel back into the heart of hell itself, and to sever the connection permanently, no matter the cost. His journey became a pilgrimage of destruction, taking him from the sterile, blood-splattered corridors of the UAC base, through the anomalous chaos of the Phobos lab, and finally to the unstable, raw portal that led back to the infernal dimension. Stepping through that gate was not an invasion. It was a homecoming. The moment his boots touched the familiar, fleshy ground of hell, a tremor ran through the entire dimension. The moaning winds seemed to carry a new note. The wailing of the damned held a fresh terror. The demons, who had enjoyed 21st centuries of relative peace, felt a chill that froze their hellfire blood. The great Slayer, the Unchained Predator, had returned, and his silence was more terrifying than any war cry. Chapter 3: The Crucible's Path and the Ghost of Argent Dinur. The Doom Slayer's return to hell was not an infiltration. It was a statement of intent, delivered with the force of a meteor impact. He tore through the dimensional gate as if it were mere tissue paper, his arrival sending shockwaves through the malleable, organic ground. The landscape itself recoiled in recognition. The groaning earth, the weeping, nerve-lined cliffs, the skis that swirled with the condensed anguish of a billion souls. All of it knew its ancient tormentor had returned. He moved through this nightmare realm with the grim, unerring confidence of a man walking through his own home. Every step a declaration of ownership. Every glance a survey of a domain he had come to reclaim. As he carved his path deeper, his arsenal, once limited to scavenged human weaponry, began to evolve, becoming an extension of his divine wrath. The super shotgun, with its gut punch blast and its new grappling hook attachment, became his voice, speaking in concise, devastating sentences. The chainsaw, its roar a promise of evisceration and a pragmatic source of ammunition, was his brutal punctuation, used to cleave through the ranks of heavier foes. And the BFG 9000, a weapon of almost mythical power that fired a ball of raw, sentient plasma which sought out and atomized any demonic life force in its vicinity, became his final, unanswerable argument against the legions of darkness. He was a composer, and the battlefield was his orchestra, playing a symphony of destruction composed in the key of ripping and tearing. His quest was now focused on a singular legendary artifact, the Crucible, a blade of immense and ancient power that was said to be the only instrument capable of permanently severing the hellish tether to the mortal world. The journey to find it was a gauntlet through the very strongest of Hell's defenses. He faced the cybernetically enhanced cybermancubus, their arm-mounted cannons spewing toxic waste, and he turned their own bloated bodies against them. He dueled with the sleek, terrifyingly fast whiplashes, their energy tails cracking like lightning, and he severed them with cold precision. Each victory was not just a tactical gain, but a ritualistic reclaiming of territory, a demonstration that no demon, no matter how powerful, was beyond his reach. This path led him to the most tragic and hallowed ground in all the cosmic conflict, the fallen city of Argent Denur. This was not a demonic stronghold, but the sacred homeworld of the Argenta, the noble warrior race who had once fought beside him in a forgotten age, who had revered him as a god of battle. In a catastrophic betrayal, Hell had managed to swallow this entire world, pulling it into the infernal dimension and corrupting its greatest heroes, the Night Sentinels, into spectral, eternal guardians bound to serve the very evil they had sworn to destroy, to walk through the majestic, crumbling ruins of Argent Denur, to see the ghosts of his former comrades in arms forced to defend their own desecrated home, was a pain that transcended physical injury, stoking the embers of his rage into a white-hot inferno of purpose. It was here, amidst the sorrowful echoes of a lost civilization, that he confronted one of Hell's ultimate commanders, the Spider Mastermind, a grotesque fusion of biological cunning, and cold, mechanical calculation, a being that represented the demonic ability to pervert and weaponize intelligence itself. Their battle was cataclysmic, a storm of chain gun fire, psychic assaults, and the Slayer's own relentless, close-quarters fury. When the cacophony finally subsided, the spider mastermind was a twitching, sparking ruin of flesh and metal, and the Doom Slayer stood victorious, the hilt of the legendary crucible now firmly in his grasp. He had secured the key to humanity's salvation. He returned to the Mars facility, the crucible blazing with an angry, red energy in his hand. Samuel Hayden awaited him at the core of the Argent energy accumulator, the massive, swirling vortex of hell power that was the source of the breach. Without a moment's hesitation, the Doom Slayer moved to plunge the blade into the heart of the accumulator to end the threat forever. But in a final, calculated act of betrayal, Hayden intervened. Using a hidden override, he paralyzed the Praetor Suit, wresting the crucible from the Slayer's immobilized grasp. "I am not the villain in this story," Hayden's synthesized voice stated, devoid of malice, filled with a cold, pragmatic logic. "I do what I do because there is no other way." He then teleported the helpless Slayer to an unknown, distant location. The mission had been a success, and yet a catastrophic failure. He had been used as a pawn to secure the very power he sought to destroy. The Doom Slayer awoke, his weapons gone, his armor dormant, stranded on a desolate, rocky planet under an alien sky. He was alone once more, cast down by the machinations of a being he had considered, if not an ally, then a temporary director. Yet his will remained unbroken, a diamond core at the center of his being. He had been imprisoned before. He had been betrayed before. He had always risen. He looked up at the unfamiliar constellations, a new, silent vow forming in the endless quiet of his mind. The fight was not over. It had simply expanded. He was the Doom Slayer, and his work, his eternal purpose, was never, ever done. Chapter 4. The Earth Beneath a Blood-Red Sky and the Hunt for the Priests. The Doom Slayer's exile was not a punishment that could hold him for long. His will was a force that bent reality itself, and his absence from the cosmic stage was brief. For in his short imprisonment, Hell, empowered by the continued flow of Argent energy and unchecked by its one true enemy, had launched its final, triumphant assault. The planet Earth was engulfed in a matter of weeks, its great cities reduced to smoldering ruins, its oceans boiling, its atmosphere permanently stained a deep, bloody crimson by the particulate ash of 1 billion murders. This was the absolute damnation he had fought for millennia to prevent, rendered in horrific, global scale. He was discovered on his barren world by a lone survivor, a pilot from the last vestige of organized human resistance known as the ARC, the Armored Response Coalition. They brought him to their last, best hope, the Fortress of Doom, a colossal, stealth-equipped spacecraft that drifted in the void, a mobile command center and arsenal that had been prepared for him long ago by the same Argenta who had once fought at his side. Here, within its hallowed, silent halls, he was not just rearmed, he was reforged. His classic arsenal was returned to him, but now it was augmented with devastating new abilities: explosive shotgun rounds, micro-missile pods, and a devastatingly powerful unmaker. He was humanity's last, silent prayer, an angel of death clad in green ceramite, and his judgment was at hand. He descended upon the ravaged earth not as a charismatic leader, inspiring the troops, but as a natural disaster on the side of humanity. He did not offer rousing speeches or words of comfort to the scattered, shell-shocked survivors. His presence was his promise, his actions their own testament. Where he walked, demons died in such numbers that their disintegrating bodies created a foul, lingering fog. He carved a path of salvation through the ruins of human civilization, a salvation bought not with hope or diplomacy, but with overwhelming, brutal, and absolute force. He was the great equalizer, the variable that hell's equations could not account for. His new mission, dictated by the desperate strategy of the Ark, was to decapitate the demonic leadership. The invasion was being guided and sustained by 3 hell priests, ancient, powerful sorcerers who were channeling the collective suffering of Earth into a ritual that would make the planet's damnation a permanent, irreversible state. These priests were protected by ancient, magical covenants that made them invulnerable to all conventional weapons. The Slayer's task was to hunt them down, to breach their sanctums, and to perform the one act that could break their protection: a ritualistic execution with the sacred, energy-bladed dagger he carried. He was now both warrior and priest, the purifier and the executioner. The hunt for the Hell Priests was a global odyssey of destruction, taking him from the frozen, demon-infested carcass of what was once Siberia to the drowned, necrotic ruins of London, and to the superheated core of a geothermal plant turned sacrificial temple. Each location was a masterpiece of infernal architecture, a perversion of a human environment into a site of horrific worship. The battles were more epic and demanding than any he had faced on Mars or in the depths of hell. He faced the colossal gladiator in a primal, blood-stained arena, a pure test of strength and will that ended with the beast's own axe buried in its skull. He dueled the dreaded marauder, a corrupted Night Sentinel who was his dark mirror, a warrior of equal skill and speed, a relentless foe who demanded perfection, and punished any mistake with swift, brutal retaliation. He finally cornered the last and most powerful of the Hell Priests, the Deep Grav, in the ruins of a grand cathedral. But the true mastermind was yet to be revealed. The Con Maker. She was not a demon, but a being of immense, cosmic power, the ruler of the angelic-seeming Maker race from the dimension of Urdak. It was she who had orchestrated the entire invasion, forming a pact with Hell to provide a continuous stream of argent energy, which was derived from tormented souls, in order to prolong the life of her own dying race. she saw humanity not as a civilization, but as a harvest, a resource to be spent for her people's survival. The Doom Slayer, for all his power, was to her merely a malfunctioning tool, a pest to be eliminated. The battle against the Con Maker was a clash that transcended the physical, fought among the soaring, crystalline spires of Urdak, a dimension of breathtaking beauty and chilling, sterile order. It was a heaven built on a foundation of hellish betrayal. She wielded the very fabric of reality against him, summoning waves of pure energy and legions of Maker drones. But the Slayer's will was an unassailable fortress. He pursued her with a relentless focus, a force of nature that could not be reasoned with, bargained with, or stopped. He emerged victorious, silencing her schemes and her justifications forever. With her death, the central pillar of the demonic invasion crumbled. The coordinated assault on Earth fractured, the demonic hordes becoming a leaderless, chaotic mob. The battle for Earth was won, but the war for the cosmos was not yet over. Chapter 5: The Confrontation with the Primeval and the Gift of Silence. With Earth liberated and the Con Maker defeated, the path was finally clear to the source of all the suffering, the font from which the demonic plague had first sprung. This was the Dark Lord, the ultimate sovereign of hell, a being of such immense power that his very existence was a wound in the cosmos. To the Doom Slayer's profound and silent shock, when he finally stood before this entity in the heart of the demonic capital of Amora, he did not face a monstrous, alien form. He faced himself. The Dark Lord was his exact duplicate, the original primeval, the being from whom the Slayer's own power and essence were derived. He was a version of the Doom Slayer from a progenitor reality, who had gazed into the abyss and chosen not to fight it, but to master it, to become it, to conquer all of creation in his own image. The final confrontation took place in Amora, a city of dark, terrifying majesty, a metropolis of obsidian and screaming steel that represented the ultimate perversion of order, a civilization built entirely on the principle of subjugation. The Dark Lord awaited him, possessing every ounce of his strength, every iota of his combat genius, every reflex and instinct, but utterly devoid of the righteous purpose that fueled the Slayer. This was not a battle against a monster. It was a battle against his own potential for absolute tyranny, a fight against the darkest possible version of his own nature, a reflection in a mirror of pure evil. The fight was the most brutal and psychologically taxing of the Slayer's endless existence. It was like fighting his own shadow, a perfect, symmetrical dance of death, where every strategy was instantly understood and countered. Every blow was met with an equal and opposite force. Every moment a razor's edge between victory and absolute annihilation. They were two sides of the same coin, locked in a struggle that would decide the fate of all realities. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath, watching this ultimate contest of will between creation's most powerful warrior and its most powerful destroyer. In the end, it was not a superior weapon or a hidden weakness that decided the conflict. It was the very thing that had always defined the Doomslayer, the core of his being that his dark twin had long since sacrificed. His unbreakable will, fueled not by a desire for power, but by a pure, selfless commitment to protection. He fought for the silence that follows the storm, for the countless, nameless worlds that would never know his name, for the simple, profound right of all living things to exist free from the corrupting touch of hell. This clarity of purpose, this purity of intent, was the one weapon the Dark Lord could not replicate and could not overcome. With a final, universe-sundering blow, the Doomslayer defeated the Dark Lord. As the entity dissolved into a dissipating cloud of dark energy, a psychic shockwave of unimaginable scale erupted from Amora, radiating out through every connected dimension. Across the infinite battlefields of hell, on every conquered world, the infinite legions of demons screamed out in a final, collective agony, and then crumbled into inert dust, their animating force extinguished forever. The cosmic cancer that had plagued creation since time immemorial was, in that single, definitive moment, cured. The endless war was, finally, completely, and irrevocably done. A profound, deep, and universal silence fell, a silence the Doomslayer had not known since the moment of his own creation. He did not celebrate his victory. He did not ascend to the empty throne of the Dark Lord. He simply stood, alone in the vast, now silent plaza of the Dark Capital, his armor scarred and smoking, the weight of eons of combat finally lifting from his shoulders. His great work, the only purpose he had ever known, was complete. He was a tool whose function had been fulfilled, a weapon with no more targets, a guardian whose watch had, at long last, ended. He had given the gift of peace to the cosmos, a peace he himself could never truly know or inhabit, for his was a soul conceived in, and forever shaped by, the crucible of eternal conflict. And so, as you drift to sleep, let your mind turn away from the fury and the fire, and settle upon the image of the Doomslayer in that final, hard-won silence. See him not as the warrior in the heat of battle, but as the sentinel who has finally, after an eternity of vigilance, been relieved of his duty, a guardian who has finished his watch, allowing the long, peaceful night to finally descend. Let the absolute peace he fought so hard to secure for all of creation now wash over you, a deep and comforting blanket of quiet. His war is over, so that your dreams can be peaceful, your rest can be deep, and your night can be filled with the gentle, unbroken silence he sacrificed everything to give. And so, the endless battle is done. The thunder of guns has faded, replaced by a deep, cosmic quiet that stretches to the edge of time and beyond. The Doomslayer rests, his eternal vigil complete, his immense purpose fulfilled. The universe is safe. Let this ultimate silence soothe your mind. Let the profound calm of a conflict finally resolved settle your spirit. There is no more danger, no more fear, only rest. Thank you for listening and for sharing in this story of ultimate peace. I am sending you so much love and positivity, and I wish for you a sleep as deep, peaceful, and restorative as the silence after the storm. Good night, everyone, and have the most relaxing dreams.